And a very good morning to you, Lagos. Thank you very much for joining us on Smooth 98.1. And this is Freshly Pressed 981. It's a part of Smooth Breakfast with Kayode Baker.
And Valentine Ohu.
And right now, we'll go through the stories on our newspapers this morning. Joining us are wonderful ladies. I feel warm in the studio already.
As you should.
We have Lola, whose voice you just heard. Hi, Lola.
Good morning, Lagos.
Good morning. And you can find her up on the socials at Lola Jewelry. Yes?
And Lola OV on Instagram.
Interesting. And CCT Lagos is here as Miss Bakari Yusuf. Good morning.
Who used to call Lola Coca-Lola? And my Coca-Lola is back.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, Miss whenever I see you, I'm always happy because it signals the beginning of the weekend.
Ah, okay, so
Yes.
I'm like the dying part
No,
of your week.
No, you're
It's called the dying part of your week.
you're the herald. You're the herald of good times.
Mm.
That's how I see it.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, and the weeding of, yes.
Valentine's got rushed.
He wants to, lyrics.
Practicing. Ahead of the
Good
weekend.
morning.
Good morning.
All right. Thank you so very much, Lagos. Join us in this conversation in Freshly Press 981. You can send in your contributions and observation on the stories. Send it through WhatsApp to 0809 444 0981. That is 0809 444 0981. You can also send in messages on Twitter at Smooth981FM. Use that hashtag Freshly Pressed 981.
So we'll start off with our first story. This one here comes from the Punch newspaper, and it comes to you, Lola. It says, ex-NAF chief Amosu to forfeit 2.2 billion naira to federal government. Please walk us through the story.
All right, so the Federal High Court in Nigeria on Wednesday ordered a former Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Adeshola Amosu, retired, to permanently forfeit to the federal government the sum of 2.2 billion naira found by the EFCC in his possession. The former NAF Director of Financial and Budget, Air Commodore Olubenga Badebo, was equally ordered to permanently forfeit the sum of 119 plus million recovered to him to the federal government, as also forfeited with a sum of 101 million recovered from Solomon Enterprises, a company linked to Amosu. It was also stated that the EFCC, the funds that were proceeds of criminal activities, holding that they, the defendants, failed to provide any facts as to the level of probability to ascertain the funds were obtained unlawfully, basically saying they couldn't prove that they made the money legally. And I mean, if you think about it, realistically speaking, you're talking about a man who was in office from 2014 to 2015. It was a very short amount of time. The charge against him actually is that he misappropriated arms procurement funds, which in a time when we are trying to tackle major insurgency issues in the north, should be a very serious and criminal offense as it stands. But what is also very interesting about this story is that they made it very clear that the burden was on the defendants themselves to prove that this money was theirs, and they failed to prove that burden to the court. So with the sums we're talking about, how do you acquire, under what guise do you claim this money?
You got the money from. Now, my question to you here is this. Are we going to see some form of conviction, maybe some form of jail time?
And that's not clearly stated yet. It's not been stated. As at now, they're only just talking about the monies being recovered and that he's being asked to forfeit the money.
There is a criminal charge against him. The trial is ongoing. The process of recovery of funds is a separate process and can run side by side.
Exactly, yes.
With them proving the charge itself. So this is the process of recovery of
the
stolen
funds.
It does not stop or affect in any way
The criminal charges against him. But you know, we've seen a lot of this sort of stories going up in the news. Now my question is, these funds are being refunded to the federal government. How does that now affect the arms procurement that was meant to be done? You see, these monies that are being stolen, misappropriated, are taken from places of very real need. So what does the federal government then do to sort of continue those projects? I'm assuming that, considering this money was taken out 2014, 2015, the need for the monies is even greater still now. What is going to be done to...
You mean as in, how do we replace that,
yes,
to
how do we
ensure
replace
the actual
that?
equipment,
Exactly.
the correct equipment, or the number of
and the number of arms that they actually require.
Yeah.
You know, we're hearing stories about our soldiers, our men up in the north being improperly armed. They don't consider themselves to be properly armed, properly trained. It stems from issues like this.
Let's not also forget or sweep under the carpet the fact that lives were lost just because they were ill-equipped like this.
Exactly.
Because of the lack of funds.
Exactly. So now the question becomes: is it going to be merely a criminal charge in terms of the finances, but also in terms of lives lost? Because
for me, I think you can answer that. Can they put a double charge, like not just a criminal
From a
charge in
legal
terms of
standpoint.
fraud, but a legal charge in terms of murder
Well, they can.
or manslaughter, whatever
Well,
it is you guys.
They can. It depends on
What
what they have at the moment. It depends a lot on what they have at the moment. And so yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that one, Lola. This one comes from Thisday newspaper. It says Osinbajo urges states to go to court over restructuring, and it comes to you for me. And well, he's talking about litigation and other things related. Please walk us through the story.
Okay. Well, restructuring has been in the news for a while now, and there's been back and forth regarding what it means, regarding what we need to do. And the Vice President was at the BC Akonde colloquium in Ijaw, where he spoke about restructuring, and he went back to his time as Commissioner of Justice in Lagos State, where he took the federal government to court and over some battles that they actually won. And so his point is that the process of constitutional change might take a while. And so anybody or states that are agitating for restructuring can take the litigation process if they want. And yes, to a certain extent, but I do not completely agree. Restructuring, first and foremost, they would then mean, what do you mean by restructuring? Because half of the battles that the Lagos State government fought at the time was in respect of allocation of resources when the federal government seized their funds. But restructuring goes beyond that. And already, to make the point, apparently at the address, the keynote speaker was Governor El Rufai, Governor of Kaduna State, and he mentioned the APC committee report on true federalism. And he said it, and quoting him, before I conclude this address, it is important to remind us of the major recommendations. The committee recommended that the federation be rebalanced, with more powers and responsibilities devolved to the states.
Okay.
That cannot be got into litigation. The court can only interpret what the law says, what the Constitution says. That goes back to our Constitution. That goes back to adjusting our exclusive and concurrent list and all of that. So there are a lot of things. You cannot go to court and get state police, for instance. it would
also leave the question for what would the roles of the National Assembly be in general? Because he also himself mentioned that.
Could you not go to court and say, look, we've been trying to negotiate this for a long time, and ask the court to push the National Assembly to push the National Assembly to, if you like, review the Constitution. Do you understand?
Constitutional amendments
I know,
going on.
but
The
it still
court-
hasn't
the court
done.
cannot step in, and sort of what you're asking is for the court to tell the National Assembly what laws to make.
No, not what laws to make, because they've done restructurings, and the restructurings obviously haven't benefited some states, which is what this is all about. Otherwise, nobody would be shouting foul, right? So what I'm saying is, some of the things they're asking for, like you said, Valentine's giving us strange eyes when he doesn't have strange eyes. Yeah. So Valentine. We'll leave it there and discuss it another time.
In conclusion, he's right,
conclusion.
but I think it's incomplete. It's not enough. There's no way we can get complete restructuring without a constitutional amendment.
Right.
All right. Thank you very much for that.
State governors haven't paid salaries. Well, now they're still fighting for 30,000. So.
Okay. So this one comes back to you, Lola. It's from the Vanguard newspaper. It says here, federal government freezes CJN Onnoghen's 5 bank accounts, and well, they're saying that. Well, there's a lot of back and forth generally. Just take us through the story.
Well, we're seeing this further step being taken by under the CJN's the accusations against the CJN.
Okay.
The federal government has apparently now asked them to freeze his accounts. These accounts in particular are the ones that relate to his domiciliary accounts, the ones that are in euros and pounds, and the 2 standard chartered accounts that were being held in Naira. Now, this is just the directive was contained in a memo with a reference HAG. Please pick up paper and check it out, because I actually want someone to tell me if they have any further opinion on this, if legally they're going about this the right way. On Monday we had the conversation.
I was going to mention that, and I think the headline is a bit misleading.
Yes.
It is.
Because federal government freezes. I doubt any account has been
I
frozen.
doubt it.
I do not.
But they
believe-
have asked
It
the
does say
CJN
here,
and
though,
he
that-
hasn't
What?
made a response yet. Now, however, where I was going with this was because we're claiming that there is a law against public officials holding domiciliary accounts somewhere.
Owning foreign.
Owning foreign accounts. But
Okay.
if they're domiciliary accounts being held by a Nigerian bank, how does that affect that? And if we're being realistic here, how many pots are calling this kettle black? And for me, the timing of it is all very, very interesting. We've heard the president come out and say, the vice president come out and say the president didn't even know about this until Saturday. Sorry, sir, but if your administration is bringing something forward, your personal awareness or not is kind of irrelevant to the point that it's being done at a particularly crucial time where we are on the world stage. Forget what the world is saying. Even among ourselves, we look extremely disorganized. Why could this not have been an ongoing investigation into the CJN that was benched until after the election?
Oh no,
I don't
disagree.
see how this affects the electoral process.
Whatever the thought about what period it came, because Mr. Ritis disagree. But very quickly, before we leave this freezing accounts thing, the one thing that we have seen is a letter from set to emanate from the office of the AGF to NFIU to freeze their account.
Okay.
What I do not
Or more like
believe,
put a restriction on the account.
whatever
It
language
was a
they
request.
use, I do not believe that the NFIU has such powers. Even the ESSA, because they're supposed to be a separate body now, a financial reporting body.
Yes.
Even the ESSA does not have such powers without an order of court.
Yes.
What Executive Order 6 says is that they should take all legal steps in getting orders to be able to do this. So I don't think the letter in itself implies that
It's not a
It's
direct.
been
can,
done.
because they will still need to get back to the court, and I'm waiting to see because
I'm not saying that there shouldn't
Okay.
be this case being made. My question is the timing of it.
Is it
And the
right?
fact that they
A
take
criminal
him
is a
to-
criminal.
No, a
irrespective
criminal
of-
is a
Well,
criminal,
it's not
but
a
there
criminal.
is-
Sorry, an accusation is
An accusation is an accusation, but there is a
irrespective of
body
time.
put in place, particularly to tackle issues with judges, and it is not at this stage. It is not the CCT. It's not the CCT.
Yeah, is it the CCT or the NJC? I get confused
Yes.
with your
Okay,
people.
thank
for
you
me.
very
Your
much for
people,
that
there's so
one.
many of them.
Let's quickly move on to our next story. This one here comes from the Daily Times, and it comes back to you for me. It says here, inflation rate rises by 0.16% and 11.14 in December. And this is coming from the National Bureau of Statistics. Please.
it's going to be a very short story, a very short analysis because Godre is not here.
Yes, we go.
Well, they said they're,
But the
they're
simple-
hinging it on the consumer price index.
Yes,
now.
the
Yes.
simple answer to it is in December, people buy ham pies.
I was
people
going to
get
say,
gifts for
everything gets inflated in
ham
December.
pies. So it's not, I don't think it's a, how will I put it, a shocking story, or it's something,
I think
not
we
unexpected.
were even lucky. I mean,
It
I'd love to
needs
hear
to
financial
stop.
analysis. It needs to stop.
It needs to stop.
You know,
That's
but
my
it also says
my
here,
frustration is it needs to stop. I really resent, and it's not just in December anymore. It starts from like the end of October, seeping into November, and you start to think, how much is chicken again? I only just bought it for that much last week.
And there are suspicions that it might extend beyond the election, seeing that a lot of
Yeah,
goods
precisely.
and services are
And that
purchased
is
around this period.
and that is the fear of the story. How hard it is for prices to come down after they've risen.
and the states
in
that it's
Nigeria.
affected the most.
Yes, Ogun, Bayelsa. So yes, the commercial states,
Yes.
not surprisingly, but I think that's the issue. The fact that the prices, it's very difficult for those prices to come down.
And this is the question: are the prices not coming down because of hoarding? Hashtag Buhari, hashtag 1983, or are the prices not coming down because those are supposed to be the real price? Do you understand me? I don't believe those are supposed to be the real price. I think what happens is in Nigeria, as we often do, we take advantage of season and therefore try to cheat each other out of what's in our pocket. And I think it's a case of dog eats dog. It's
And-
not going to come down.
Usually when it gets close to election period, because of a pending transition, people and businesses are very
Tend to hold on to
particular.
things.
Yes, are very
Yeah,
particular
they
about
hoard.
transactions, and then it,
Hashtag Buhari
it affects
1983.
prices. Yes.
Yeah, but to play the devil's advocate here, understanding the history that we have with violence during election seasons with inconsistency. You see so much disruption. Can we really, and I'm saying devil's advocate here, don't claim equity like giving me the eyes, but can we really blame the
people?
Yes, can we really blame, the commercial market for responding this way? I'm not saying
No,
that
we
it's
can't.
right.
Oh
but
yeah,
I'm
I
just
agree
saying,
with you.
These are the
Retail
people on
is
ground.
about
I want to
opportunity.
celebrate the fact that for once, because we didn't have the typical December fall scarcity, I think the inflation rate would have been much higher.
Yes.
If we had added the inflation attached to
so,
transport.
yeah.
So, let's be grateful for small mercies. It's not great mercy, but small.
I get what you're saying. Of course, retail is about opportunity, and you've got to take advantage of the season, because etc. etc. I totally get it. I don't resent them for it. It's just that I'm on the other side, so I'm going to resent it rather than resent them.
Bengals here on WhatsApp says, one of the reasons why I support PMB in its fight against corruption, which by my reckoning has been successful so far. He says, my excitement and confidence in this administration's fight against corruption increased yesterday with the news of the permanency of the sum of the refund you meant to say of 2.2 billion naira belonging to the former Chief of Naval Staff Olusola Amosu. Though more people who are still disgruntled that their hero of democracy lost 2015 general elections and deliberately decided to see anything good in his administration, will always claim that the fight hasn't yielded any positive results. Okay, Benga, your message sounds very partisan, but we'll continue later. Lulu from VI says, regarding the former Chief of Air Staff, shouldn't EFCC prove that the funds are proceeds of crime, rather than he needing to prove that they are not? I do not doubt that the money was probably stolen, but it sets a disturbing precedent when people are asked to prove a negative, rather than the authorities proving what they think happened.
Okay, can I quickly respond
yes,
to that?
please.
So when an interim forfeiture is ordered against, which is the first step, the FCC by the affidavit shows that it's process of crime. So they did it out for you to come and say, no, I got this money legally.
And that should be easy
And
enough
that
to
was
prove.
what the court said that they did not prove.
That should be easy enough to prove. If you've ever had to take financial statements to an embassy, even as an individual,
Yes.
you know how easy it is for someone to say, please, what is this expenditure? And you should be able to respond to that. You cannot tell me 2.2 billion. And that
you
does not
can't
even include the
explain
101 billion that was in a private business enterprise linked to him. And you cannot prove without any measure of doubt that, oh, this was this transaction with this company that I did, or that was this transaction with this company that I did. And the coincidence that the financial amount is so similar to the amount that was misappropriated from the arms procurement deal calls too many questions.
Even if you buy 5,000 naira fuel, you have receipts.
You have receipts. You should have receipts as a corporation.
All right, let's move on to this next story from Premium Times. Facebook announces measures to check fake news in Nigeria's election. Remember how last year we heard the report from Cambridge Analytica, how they were involved in trying to rig the 2015 election. That's precisely the SCL company. Well, in this news, it says in order to curb the spread of fake news during the forthcoming general elections in Nigeria, Facebook and their global arm have said that only advertisers located in Nigeria will be allowed to run political adverts. What are your thoughts, Lola?
Well, we thank God for small measures. We thank God because, no, let's be honest, because Facebook has been facing a lot of litigation, a lot of press coverage based on the fact that they've had so much misuse in other elections, and I thank God for that, because we've seen situations in America, we've seen how that spun out of control, we saw the Brexit incident, we saw what's been accused to be happening in India, we've seen the
Trump.
I said America. I do not want to
I don't know which other America there is.
Make a country great again candidate, but you also see even down to humanitarian issues like
Absolutely.
Myanmar. So it's vital and it's crucial, and I just love how we as Nigerians sort of brushed aside the allegation that they had something to do with former President Jonathan Goodluck's campaign and then subsequent winning. In the story here, they say the firm was said to have been hired to do the dirty job by an unnamed Nigerian oil billionaire. Premium time journalist, please, sir.
What is the person's name?
Name the name.
Name and shame.
There's nothing wrong at this point with stating facts, because reporting these issues after the fact.
Maybe the name was not given to them.
Possibly.
Well, then that's why an investigative journalist investigate.
Right.
Come back to me with facts. It's going to be great to see how many measures are taken to ensure transparency, particularly in Facebook. But I also want to point out that there are enough people in this country, if they have ulterior motives, with money enough to run campaigns on Facebook that will be just as inappropriate, that will be just as untrue. I hate to use the term fake news because of what it means, but essentially lying. Now, where that becomes my concern is, what is Facebook going to do to check these claims? In Myanmar, when they were having the issue with the Rohingya crisis, they found out that the real reason what was going on is because they didn't have translators in Myanmar that spoke the language, or as many of the dialects. So the stories would be out there for ages, and we know what happens with information. The longer it's out there, the more likely we are to believe it.
And sometimes it's read out of context.
And it read out of context, and then Chinese whispers, it spirals. So
and that's what I was going to say. The difference between, it's a fine line between rumor and fake news. Exactly, and I think what we used to know as rumors is what's become fake news.
And now all you need to do is put a picture to it, and they're like, oh wow, you know,
you repeat it enough
someone
times.
built a house made out of gold. Suddenly it spirals into someone built a city made out of gold. You don't know where it goes from there. So what measures are they actually going to take to make sure that if a story pops up that is untrue, how quickly is it taken down?
It's just perfunctory. Facebook are not going to do a great deal. Let's just get on with it. As usual, they use Nigerians.
So they've been working on, I know this because I'm a tech aficionado, but I know that Facebook has been experimenting on an AI, artificial intelligence, for many years. So I'm sure this is one of the
What's that got to do with, what are they
No,
going
no,
to do with
no.
Nigeria? No, my question is, whether they have it or not, I'm saying to you that a lot of these companies don't particularly care. I have a niece that works for Facebook. They don't, but they're not particularly that passionate about Nigeria.
Concerning the AI in particular, because even YouTube has a similar algorithm set up, where they flag certain stories, certain statements, certain comments.
Yes, it does. But
And
even that didn't work.
So here's my challenge. So here's my challenge to Facebook users. Cross-check the facts you get. There are enough. We all have social media on our apps right now. Don't just take anything at face value. And if you see a story that does not make sense, report it.
Or just go and read about the candidate you want to vote about. Read their policy and move on.
But if you check their Wikipedia, they're all saints. All of them are saints now, according to Wikipedia.
My Coca-Cola's back.
How many of us read? Chuku sent in a message on WhatsApp that says, I think the prices of commodities during festive periods simply responds to demands. Higher demands attract higher prices, while during elections, as the case in Nigeria, responds to uncertainty. Well,
the demand for chicken in my house changes not a jot.
Exactly.
It's the same.
The president is not aware of the CJN's harassment. Who then is behind the unscrupulous and illegal acts of the cabals that are bent on winning the elections at all costs? We'll go to more questions, or rather messages relative to this. The Guardian newspaper has this story. Buhari urges media to expose corrupt governors and others. At first sight, I thought about Ganduje. But that's not the meat of the story. Meat of the story is that the president has given the charge. He gave the charge that when he and the vice president were speaking on a televised 2-hour town hall meeting, asking people to call out the governors who are given some allocation from the federal government. That's about 75% allocation, and the local government chairman given 25%. That citizens should call out these governors if the monies are not appropriated appropriately, rather in the right way. Mr. Riti, what are your thoughts on this?
Right. As in
Lagos, anyway. I really need you to go up on YouTube, because you need to see the eyes up in the studio, yo. Everybody's eyes in the back of their heads just rolling around and around.
Rolling around. Anyway, so Buhari is saying, look, is wanting to use the press as part of his anti-graft army, if you like. Not necessarily a bad thing, like Lola said, as long as it's investigated. So if you do proper investigative journalism, like they did with Ganduje, Gandu Dollar, whatever it is you want to call him, then yes, one can respect that. And I think what we don't want is for members of the press to go out and just basically hear a rumor, formate it, and turn it into an article, and so somebody gets arrested. But I do like what he said here. He said, look, it was uncovered that some local government chairmen had to sign for allocation from the federal government, and that only 25% is being given to them, while the rest will be kept by those governors. And I want the press to investigate this and expose these corrupt governors. The local governments have been complaining for ages about the fact that they don't get their allocation. We know that they're often treated as the poorer cousins, you know, the younger bureaus, etc., and they get, it's a case of, you know, you get given kickback. Yes, that's right. You know, you just get given a little bit and just go make go make do with it, whereas it's supposed to be much bigger. And it's important where local governments, I keep saying, look, my focus this year is very much on my local government elections, not so much in the bigger elections, because I've been there, done that, and the local government is what really impacts my everyday life, as I keep saying, So we need to respect our local governments more, but if we can respect them, then the state governments need to respect them.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Racy, for that one. Taiwo from Surulere sends in this message. It says, thank you, Fumi, for your analysis on the freezing of the CJN's accounts, because I did not realize that the executive had power to make such an order without resort to the courts. P.S. I also wonder how many pots are calling the kettle black. Well, Opeyemi says the president is just too old for governance. Opeyemi, please respect the presidency. Disparaging remark.
Old is not a disparaging remark.
I was going to say, so can we stop his
When
sensitivity?
you say too old,
It can be too old. You can say somebody is too old, and this is part of it. Look, just because we're in elections doesn't mean that we lose our right to have an opinion. He has the right to say somebody's too old. It's got nothing to do with whether he should be voted for or not.
okay, saying old is right, all right? There's no problem with that. But when you say too old in that context,
No, it isn't. You're wrong. I'm sorry. And we're having this argument on air. You're wrong.
it's
I
teetering,
can think you're too old. You can think I'm too old.
it will be teetering on the brinks of disparaging remark.
No.
or disrespect.
No.
Okay, so we have more messages here. This one here says, that's from Wole. In as much as I have reservations with the approach of the timing of the CJ issues, I'm disappointed by the explanation put forward by the CJ that he forgot to declare what was expected at the time. Please tell that to the Marines. We cannot have different rules for classes of people in Nigeria. Even if the process is not tidy enough, a precedent is already laid that no one is immune, including the president himself. All right, let's move on to this next story. Mr. Rita, I'll stick with you for this one. Vanguard newspaper has this one. Ijaw youth writes Buhari over disregard for local content law. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, my thoughts are the Ijaw youths are too young. Is that? Yeah, there you go. Anyway, yeah, so basically this is about this local content issue. So basically what they're saying is that the oil companies are not respecting the local content. A quote is here. It says, the youth said, since the beginning of the implementation of the local content law, in the last few years, the situation in the Niger Delta has moved from bad to worse, stressing that the poverty rate in the oil and gas communities had increased astronomically. Well, poverty rate has increased astronomically, the country, across the board. So it's not just in their community. So let's stop personalizing everything and then weaponizing our ethnicity, because that's one thing we do very well in this country.
But what they're speaking to essentially is the fact that, I mean, the local content law aims to allow more Nigerians to participate in the crucial oil and gas industry. So you find that locally made built refineries are not allowed to operate.
Which is where I was going to. Let's not weaponize ethnicity and focus on the fact. The fact is, the law focuses on Nigerians. It's not just about Ijaw youths. And what they're talking about actually is Ijaw youths. It says here, most of their jobs are awarded to companies which they have interest in. Even where a few Niger Delta contractors are engaged, they deliberately refuse to pay them. So they are specifically, and it talks about the indigents, the host community. So they are specifically talking about themselves. What they need to remember is that the law actually is about Nigerians as a whole. So therefore, I should be able to go there, right? And the question is, can I go over there and actually bid for a contract and get it? Would they believe that it's been given to one of them or not? Because that's a frank question we must ask.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reti Bakari Yusuf. Unfortunately, that's the last story we can have time to touch today. Messages here. Ade says he's too old to run, and a lot of other candidates are too, considering the age range of the average Nigerian.
Physically run, physically run.
I guess RUN.
Any run is running.
Race. Lagos, thank you so very much.
Facts, right?
Special thanks to Miss Adeline. Just enjoyed the sparring. So if you looked at
No,
my eyes,
facts
you
are
saw
not disparaging, and that's not fake news.
But I just enjoy having this argument.
And I vote for Harry.
CCT Lagos is our handle, and you can catch Lola at Lola Jewelry
At Lola Jewelry and at Lola OV up on Instagram.
and at Fumi Odude on all social
Can I
media.
send code that Lola's?
Lagos, we'll talk entertainment inside of the green.
We're gonna bottle it.
I invest where money never sleeps.